Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Once upon a time, in a big kingdom, the king passed away. He left his queen in charge of their only child, a beautiful daughter. The queen loved her daughter very much and was very kind to her. There was also a kind fairy who liked the princess and helped her mother look after her. As the princess grew up, she got engaged to a prince who lived far away. As the time got closer for her to get married, she started preparing for her journey to the prince's kingdom. The queen, her mother, packed many expensive things like jewelry, gold, silver, pretty things, beautiful dresses, and everything a royal bride should have. She also gave the princess a maid to travel with her and give her to the prince when they arrived. Each of them had a horse for the journey. The princess's horse was a special gift from the fairy, and it could talk, and its name was Falada. When it was time to leave, the fairy went to the princess's room, took a little knife, cut off a piece of her hair, and gave it to the princess. The fairy said, "Keep this, dear child. It's a magical charm that might help you on your journey." They said a sad goodbye to the princess, and she put the piece of hair in her pocket, got on her horse, and started her journey to her future husband's kingdom. One day, while they were riding near a stream, the princess felt very thirsty. She said to her maid, "Please get down and fetch me some water in my golden cup from that stream. I want to drink." The maid replied, "No, if you're thirsty, get down yourself, bend over the stream, and drink. I'm not your maid anymore." The princess was so thirsty that she got off her horse, knelt by the stream, and drank directly from it. She was scared and didn't want to use her golden cup. She started crying and said, "Oh no, what will happen to me?" Then the piece of hair spoke up and said, "Oh no, oh no. If your mom only knew so. She'd be sad, I know." The princess was very gentle and kind, so she didn't say anything when her maid behaved badly. She got back on her horse. They continued on their journey until it became very hot and the sun was scorching. The bride got thirsty again. When they reached a river, she forgot her maid's rude words and asked, "Please get down and bring me some water to drink in my golden cup." But the maid replied rudely, "You can drink if you want, but I won't be your maid." The princess was so thirsty that she got off her horse, bent down by the river, and started crying, saying, "What will happen to me?" The lock of hair spoke up again. "Oh no, oh no. If your mom only knew so. She'd be sad, I know." As she leaned down to drink, the lock of hair slipped from her pocket and floated away with the water. She was too scared to notice, but her maid saw it and was pleased because she knew the charm. She realized that the bride would be in her power now that she lost the hair. When the bride finished drinking and tried to get back on Falada, the maid said, "All right, Falada, and you can have my horse instead." So the bride had to give up her horse and soon change out of her royal clothes into the maid's old ones. As they got closer to the end of their journey, the treacherous servant threatened to kill the princess if she ever told anyone what had happened. But Falada saw everything and remembered it. Then the waiting maid rode on Falada, and the real bride rode on the other horse. They continued like this until they reached the royal court. There was great joy when they arrived, and the prince rushed to meet them, thinking the maid was his bride. He took the maid off her horse, believing she was the one to be his wife, and led her to the royal chamber. The true princess was told to stay in the courtyard. At that moment, the old king had nothing else to do, so he sat at his kitchen window, watching what was happening. He saw the princess in the courtyard, looking very pretty and too delicate to be a waiting maid. He went up to the royal chamber to ask the bride who the girl in the courtyard was. She replied, "I brought her with me to keep me company on the journey. Please give her some work to do so she won't be idle." The old king couldn't think of any work for her at first, but then he said, "I have a young lad who takes care of my geese. She can go and help him." The name of the lad the real bride was to help was Curdken. The false bride asked the prince, "My dear husband, please do something for me." The prince agreed, "Of course, I will." She said, "Please ask one of your workers to cut off the head of the horse I rode on. It was very naughty and troubled me a lot during the journey." But in truth, she was very afraid that Falada might someday speak and reveal all she had done to the real princess. She got her wish, and the loyal Falada was killed. When the true princess found out, she cried and asked the man to hang Falada's head by a big dark gate in the city, which she had to pass through every morning and evening. This way, she could still see him sometimes. The worker agreed, cut off the head, and hung it under the dark gate. Early the next morning, as she and Curdken walked out through the gate, she sadly said, "Falada, Falada, there you hang." And the head replied, "Bride, bride, my princess. Alas! Alas! If your mother knew it, sadly, sadly, would she regret it." Then they left the city and herded the geese. When they reached a meadow, she sat down on a grassy bank and let her shiny silver hair flow. When Curdken saw it sparkle in the sun, he tried to pull some of her hair out. But she said, "Blow, breezes, blow. Let Curdken's hat go. Blow, breezes, blow. Let him after it go." Then a strong wind blew Curdken's hat away, and he had to chase after it. By the time he returned, she had finished combing and curling her hair and put it back up neatly. He was very angry and silent after that, and he didn't talk to her. They watched the geese until it got dark and then herded them back home. The next morning, as they passed through the dark gate, the poor girl looked up at Falada's head and cried, "Falada, Falada, there you hang." And the head replied, "Bride, bride, my princess. Alas! Alas! If your mother knew it, sadly, sadly, would she regret it." Then she herded the geese, sat down in the meadow, and began to comb her hair again, just like before. Curdken came up to her and wanted to touch her hair, but she quickly said, "Blow, winds, blow. Let Curdken's hat go. Blow, winds, blow. Let him chase it, you know." The wind blew Curdken's hat away, and it went far, far away, so he had to run after it. When he returned, she had tied up her hair again, and everything was fine. They looked after the geese until it got dark. In the evening, when they got home, Curdken went to the old king and said, "I can't have that strange girl help me with the geese anymore." The king asked, "Why not?" Curdken replied, "Instead of being helpful, she just annoys me all day long." So the king asked him to explain what had happened. Curdken said, "When we go through the dark gate in the morning with our geese, she talks to the head of a horse that hangs on the wall, and she says, 'Falada, Falada, there you hang.' And the head replies, 'Bride, bride, my princess.' Alas! Alas! If your mother knew it! Sadly, sadly, would she regret it." Curdken continued to tell the king what happened in the meadow while the geese were grazing, how his hat was blown away, and how he had to chase after it, leaving the geese alone. The old king told the boy to go out again the next day. When morning came, he hid behind the dark gate and overheard her talking to Falada and Falada's responses. Then he went to the field, hid in a bush by the meadow, and saw for himself how they tended to the geese. After a while, she let down her shiny hair in the sun, and he heard her say, "Blow, winds, blow! Let Curdken's hat go! Blow, winds, blow! Let him chase it, you know." And a strong wind came, carrying away Curdken's hat. Curdken ran after it, while the girl continued to comb and curl her hair. The old king saw all of this and went home without being noticed. When the little goose girl returned in the evening, he called her aside and asked why she did that. She started crying and said, "I can't tell you or any man, or I'll lose my life." But the old king begged so much that she couldn't resist and told him the whole story, from the beginning to the end, word by word. Luckily, she did, because when she finished, the king ordered her to wear royal clothes and admired her beauty. Then he called his son and explained that the false bride was just a maid, while the true bride stood beside them. The young king was overjoyed by her beauty and her patient nature. Without saying anything to the false bride, the king arranged a grand feast for the entire court. The bridegroom sat at the head of the table with the false princess on one side and the true one on the other. But nobody recognized the true bride because her beauty was so radiant in her royal attire, and she looked nothing like the little goose girl. After they had eaten, drank, and were very happy, the old king said he wanted to tell a story. He began telling the story of the princess as if it were one he had heard before. Then he asked the true waiting maid what should happen to someone who behaved that way. The false bride replied, "The person should be put into a barrel lined with sharp nails, and 2 white horses should pull it through the streets until she dies." The old king said, "You are the one." He continued, "As you've judged yourself, so shall it be done to you." Then the young king married his true wife, and they ruled the kingdom in peace and happiness for the rest of their lives. The good fairy came to visit them and brought faithful Falada back to life.